Employer engagement, of course, is, so to say, probably the most important factor in organizing a tight relation between education and the labor market. There has been an interesting study of colleagues of mine from the ETH Zurich who looked into the question, how closely is education and employment linked in the various countries, by focusing on vocational education and training systems. So actually they wanted to know is how good are vocational education and training systems performing? How responsive are they in relation to the needs of the labor markets and employers in particular? Now, on this slide, you can see a selection of questions which they have used in their survey, and which I think also work as a good guidance, actually, in making sure how employer engagement can be organized. Those with the dual system, Austria, Switzerland, Denmark, and Germany, they perform pretty well on the sort of education and employment linkage index they have built. So in all three phases, the design, application, and feedback phase. Whereas other countries, here some Asian countries, Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, they are doing not that well. My guess would be that UK comes in here somewhere in the middle. Now, what is an intercompany training center and what is a center of vocational excellence? Intercompany training centers, as they have been established in Austria, Germany, but also in other countries, are actually training centers where different employers come together to train their apprentices. Usually, this is the case for small and medium-sized enterprises who cannot afford, so to say, teaching apprentices the full curriculum. So there are, for instance, certain equipment or certain modules they can't teach. So they would send then their apprentices to such an intercompany training center. But this is not only, so to say, a one-way communication, because people or apprentices in those centers then bring innovations they see in the teaching process back to their company and then bring innovation into the company. So this is what broadly an intercompany training center is, how it is organized in Germany. Also, of course, in Austria, we have intercompany training centers which have been established for apprentices who cannot find an apprenticeship place at a regular company. So those would also be trained in intercompany training centers. Intercompany training centers can have different size, they can have different locations, but usually this is an institution of its own, independent of vet schools in Switzerland, Austria, or Germany. So they would collaborate with schools, they would collaborate with companies for most, but they are separate centers. I think what is comparable maybe, or one service which exists in the UK, partly maybe comparable to those sort of intercompany training centers and training alliances, are the apprenticeship training agencies, ATAs in England. A better idea what a center of vocational excellence is about, I recommend you watching this video which showcases the Camelot Innovation and Learning Labs in the Netherlands, introduced by Cyril Mentink, the Chief Operating Officer at that lab. How can intercompany training centers support SMEs and innovation? The German Ministry of Education has established a particular program for supporting digitalization in intercompany training centers. And for that purpose, they have produced a short animated video, which I think explains perfectly how intercompany training centers in Germany operate and how innovation is, so to say, produced in small and medium enterprises by collaborating with those centers. This video gives you some insights into a German intercompany training center in Hamburg in the field of construction. It's a very short commercial of that intercompany training center, but nevertheless, I think you get an idea of how those centers work. If you want to know more about centers of vocational excellence, and in particular how those are supporting skills ecosystems, I recommend you watching a video where you see João Santos, who is the deputy head of the unit of vocational education and training, apprenticeships and adult learning in the Directorate of Employment and Social Affairs at the European Commission. And he is more or less the man behind the idea of the program of Centers of Vocational Excellence in Europe. As you will see from the video, he's very enthusiastic about this concept, but he also perfectly explains how those centers work, and he also gives a few country examples from Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and the Basque region. SMEs are usually not in the position to have their own intelligence units to watch out for what is the next steps in terms of skills development. And very often they also don't have the sort of training facilities you find at larger corporations. So that's where usually intermediate organizations come in. In Switzerland, Austria, Germany, but also Norway, Finland, this is very often done by chambers of commerce or chambers of industries. So they have their own networks. They very often have local apprenticeship offices, for instance, supervising or supporting smaller enterprises. And also there is this option of training alliances, so where SMEs come together, supported by the Chamber of Commerce, for instance, and very often funded also by the Chamber of Commerce or also by other public means in setting up such training alliances.